In the heart of New Haven, a city buzzing with students and scholars, Karoline Leavitt found herself stepping into an arena she hadn't fully anticipated. Known for her sharp mind and unwavering faith, Karoline was a journalist who had made a name for herself by tackling tough topics with grace and determination. She wasn't afraid to ask hard questions or stand up for what she believed in, even when it meant facing opposition. This time, however, the stakes felt higher than usual. It all started with an invitation. A professor from Yale University had reached out to her, asking if she would participate in a panel discussion about the role of faith in modern society. At first, Karoline hesitated. She knew these kinds of debates could get heated, especially on a college campus where skepticism often reigned supreme. But something about the invitation intrigued her. The chance to share her perspective and perhaps challenge others was too good to pass up. So after some thought, she accepted. The day of the event arrived sooner than expected. Karoline dressed carefully, choosing a navy blue blazer that gave her an air of professionalism without being overly formal. As she walked into the lecture hall, she couldn't help but notice how packed it was. Students filled every seat, spilling into the aisles, while faculty members sat near the front, their expressions unreadable. The energy in the room was electric, a mix of curiosity and tension. On stage, 3 chairs were arranged behind a long table draped with a dark cloth. Karoline took her seat at one end, glancing at the other participants. To her left sat Professor Aaron Klein, a man whose reputation preceded him. He was known for his biting critiques of religion, often dismissing it as outdated superstition. His books had sparked controversy worldwide, earning him both admirers and enemies. Beside him was Dr. Laura Bennett, a sociologist who studied the impact of belief systems on communities. Though less confrontational than Klein, she carried an air of quiet confidence. As the moderator introduced the topic, Karoline listened intently. Her fingers traced the edge of her notebook, a habit she'd developed during moments of focus. When it came time for opening statements, each speaker took turns outlining their views. Laura spoke first, presenting data on how faith influenced social cohesion. Then it was Klein's turn. Professor Klein leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His voice carried easily across the room, commanding attention. "Faith," he began, "has been a cornerstone of human civilization for millennia. But let's not confuse tradition with truth." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Many of the stories we hold sacred are nothing more than ancient myths designed to explain the unexplainable. Take, for example, Christianity. The idea of a virgin birth, walking on water, rising from the dead. These are tales no different from those of Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy." A murmur rippled through the audience. Some nodded in agreement, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Karoline felt a surge of emotion rise within her, but she kept her expression neutral. She had anticipated this line of reasoning, but hearing it delivered so bluntly still stung. Klein continued, growing more animated. "We live in an age of science and reason, yet millions cling to beliefs rooted in ignorance and fear. It's time to move beyond fairy tales and embrace reality." When he finished, the room fell silent. All eyes turned to Karoline, waiting for her response. For a moment, she simply sat there, gathering her thoughts. Then, with deliberate calmness, she stood up. Her chair scraped softly against the floor, drawing everyone's attention. "Professor Klein," she began, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "I appreciate your passion for critical thinking. In fact, I share it. But I must challenge your characterization of Christianity, and indeed of Jesus himself, as mere mythology." She paused, scanning the faces before her. "You mentioned science and reason. Well, let me remind you that many brilliant minds throughout history have been devout believers. Isaac Newton, Blaise Pascal, Gregor Mendel. They saw no conflict between their faith and their work. Faith isn't about rejecting evidence, it's about seeking truth, even when answers aren't immediately clear." Karoline stepped away from the table, pacing slightly as she spoke. "Now, regarding the claims you dismissed as fairy tales, the virgin birth, miracles, resurrection, I understand why someone unfamiliar with the context might view them skeptically. But consider this. Extraordinary events often require extraordinary explanations. Just because we don't fully understand something doesn't mean it didn't happen. Her gaze locked onto Klein's. Let me pose a question to you. If tomorrow, scientists discovered concrete evidence supporting biblical accounts, say artifacts or documents that predate existing records, would you be willing to reconsider your stance? The room seemed to hold its breath. Klein raised an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard. That's a hypothetical scenario, he replied cautiously. But fine. If such evidence existed, I'd examine it thoroughly. Karoline smiled faintly. Good, because sometimes the truth is stranger and more compelling than fiction. The moderator intervened before the exchange could escalate further, reminding everyone to keep their remarks respectful. Still, the tension lingered, crackling like static in the air. Karoline returned to her seat, her pulse racing. She knew she had planted a seed of doubt in Klein's confident facade, but she also knew this was only the beginning. After the debate ended, Karoline lingered backstage, signing copies of her latest article for eager students. Despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was unfolding. That night, as she reviewed old research materials for her next project, she stumbled upon a dusty manuscript tucked away in the library archives. Its pages were brittle, the ink faded but legible. What she read there would change everything, not just for her, but for the world. Little did Karoline know, her encounter with Professor Klein was merely the spark that would ignite a journey far beyond anything she could have imagined. That night, after the debate, Karoline couldn't stop thinking about what Professor Klein had said. His words echoed in her mind like a challenge she couldn't ignore. She didn't want to let his claims go unanswered, especially since they struck at the heart of everything she believed in. Determined to find something, anything that could counter his arguments, she decided to dig deeper into history and ancient texts. Karoline spent hours combing through old books and articles in her small apartment. Her desk was cluttered with papers, notes, and half-empty coffee cups. Just as fatigue began to set in, she remembered hearing about a local library known for its rare collection of historical documents. It wasn't far from where she lived, so she grabbed her coat and headed out into the cool evening air. The library was quiet, almost eerily so. The librarian, an elderly woman named Margaret, greeted her warmly. "Looking for something special?" Margaret asked, noticing the intensity in Karoline's eyes. "I'm not sure yet," Karoline admitted. "I need anything related to early Christianity or biblical history. Something unusual." Margaret nodded thoughtfully. "We do have some older materials stored in the basement. They're not cataloged online. Would you like to take a look?" Karoline's curiosity piqued. "Yes, please." Margaret led her down a narrow staircase to a dimly lit room, filled with shelves of dusty books and rolled-up scrolls. The smell of aged paper hung thick in the air. As Karoline scanned the shelves, one item caught her eye, a leather-bound manuscript tucked away in a corner. Its cover was worn, and the edges of the pages were yellowed with age. When she opened it, she realized it was written in Aramaic, the language spoken during Jesus' time. Her heart raced. Though she couldn't read Aramaic fluently, she recognized enough to see that the text contained references to celestial events, strange occurrences, and accounts of people witnessing miracles. Some parts seemed familiar, aligning with stories from the Bible, but others described phenomena that sounded almost otherworldly. Lights in the sky, objects moving against natural laws, and voices heard without explanation. Realizing she needed help, Karoline called her friend Daniel Carter. Daniel was a linguist who specialized in ancient languages and had a knack for solving puzzles. He had always been fascinated by mysteries of the past, and Karoline knew he would jump at the chance to decipher something this intriguing. When Daniel arrived the next day, he was immediately captivated by the manuscript. "This is incredible," he said, flipping through the fragile pages carefully. "It's not just religious text, it seems to blend history, science, and maybe even technology." Karoline frowned. "Technology? From thousands of years ago?" Daniel shrugged. "Maybe. Not our kind of technology, but there are symbols here, patterns I've seen in studies of ancient engineering. And these descriptions of lights in the sky, they sound like UFO sightings. Karoline wasn't sure what to make of that. She had always approached faith from a spiritual perspective, not a scientific one. Still, the idea that these events might have physical explanations intrigued her. What if the miracles described in the Bible weren't just acts of God, but evidence of something beyond human understanding? Over the next few days, Karoline and Daniel worked tirelessly to translate the manuscript. They pieced together fragments of text, cross-referencing them with known historical records. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The document spoke of a series of extraordinary events occurring around the year 0 AD, the same time period associated with Jesus' life. There were mentions of a bright star appearing in the heavens, guiding travelers to Bethlehem. Other passages described storms calming instantly, water turning solid underfoot, and crowds fed with impossibly small amounts of food. But the most puzzling part came near the end of the manuscript. It referenced beings of light descending from the skies, interacting with humans and imparting knowledge. These beings were described as both awe-inspiring and terrifying, capable of performing feats no mortal could achieve. Karoline wondered if this was metaphorical language meant to convey divine intervention, or something else entirely. As they delved deeper, their interpretations diverged. Daniel leaned toward the theory that extraterrestrial visitors had influenced human history, leaving behind traces of advanced technology. "Think about it," he said excitedly. "If aliens came to Earth thousands of years ago, wouldn't they leave behind artifacts? Maybe we've misinterpreted those artifacts as religious relics." Karoline disagreed. To her, the manuscript reinforced her belief in a higher power. "These events aren't random coincidences," she argued. "They're signs pointing to something greater than ourselves. Whether it's God or another force doesn't matter. What matters is that humanity has always sought answers, and sometimes those answers come in ways we can't fully comprehend." Their debates grew heated at times, but both remained committed to uncovering the truth. One evening, as they sat, surrounded by piles of notes and reference books, Daniel suggested taking their investigation further. "If this manuscript is real, and I think it is, we need to follow its clues. It mentions specific locations tied to these events. If we visit them, we might find more evidence." Karoline hesitated. Traveling halfway around the world on a hunch wasn't exactly practical. But the thought of discovering something that could change how people viewed faith and science was too tempting to resist. After weighing the risks, she agreed. Their first destination was Israel, home to many of the sites mentioned in the manuscript. Before leaving, Karoline made sure to pack lightly, bringing only essentials and a camera to document their findings. Daniel, ever the planner, created a detailed itinerary based on the geographical references in the text. The trip started smoothly enough. They landed in Tel Aviv and rented a car to drive north toward Galilee. Along the way, they visited ancient ruins and spoke with local historians who shared oral traditions passed down through generations. Some stories matched the manuscript's descriptions perfectly, while others introduced new details that deepened the mystery. One afternoon, they stopped at a secluded monastery perched on a hillside. The monks welcomed them warmly, offering tea and conversation. When Karoline showed them a photocopy of the manuscript, their eyes widened in recognition. "This symbol," one monk said, pointing to a peculiar mark on the page, "is said to represent a gateway between worlds. Our ancestors believed it marked places where heaven touched earth." Intrigued, Karoline asked if they knew of any such gateways nearby. The monk nodded solemn connaissance resingly. "There is a cave system close to here. Few venture there, for it is steeped in legend. Locals say strange things happen within its depths, lights that move on their own, whispers carried by the wind. Perhaps you will find what you seek." That night, armed with flashlights and determination, Karoline and Daniel ventured into the caves. The air inside was cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of earth and stone. Their footsteps echoed softly as they navigated narrow tunnels, guided by the monk's vague directions. After what felt like hours, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber. At first glance, it appeared empty, but as they examined the walls more closely, they noticed faint engravings etched into the rock. The designs were intricate, unlike anything either of them had seen before. Some resembled constellations, while others looked like circuit boards or blueprints. Then Daniel spotted something glinting in the corner. He knelt down and brushed away layers of dirt to reveal a metallic object partially embedded in the ground. It was small, roughly the size of a coin, but its surface shimmered with an iridescent glow. When he picked it up, it hummed faintly, sending vibrations through his hand. "What is this?" Karoline whispered, her voice trembling with awe. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not from this world or this time." As they stood there staring at the mysterious artifact, a sense of wonder washed over them. For Karoline, it felt like standing on the edge of discovery, peering into a realm where faith and science intertwined. For Daniel, it was validation of his lifelong quest to unravel the unknown. Neither of them realized yet how much their lives and the world were about to change. Karoline and Daniel stared at the strange metallic object in stunned silence. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Smooth, cold to the touch, yet pulsing faintly with an inner light. The hum it emitted seemed almost alive, as if the artifact were communicating in a language neither of them could understand. For a moment they forgot where they were, their minds racing to make sense of what lay before them. "This changes everything," Daniel finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned the object over in his hands, examining it from every angle. "If this is real, and I think it is, it's proof that there's more to history than we've been told. Maybe even more to humanity itself." Karoline nodded slowly, her heart pounding. She felt a mix of emotions, excitement, fear, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. "But what does it mean?" she asked. "Is it evidence of divine intervention, or something else?" Daniel hesitated. "I don't know. But whatever it is, it's big and dangerous. Someone out there probably doesn't want us finding this." He wasn't wrong. As they left the cave system later that evening, they noticed a black SUV parked near their rental car. Two men stood beside it, watching them intently. One wore dark sunglasses despite the fading sunlight, while the other held a clipboard and spoke into a walkie-talkie. Something about their presence felt off. Karoline glanced at Daniel, her unease growing. "Do you think they followed us here?" "It's possible," he replied, keeping his voice low. "Let's not stick around to find out." They climbed into their car quickly, trying not to draw attention. As they drove away, Karoline looked back and saw the SUV pulling onto the road behind them. Her stomach tightened. Were they being followed? Or was she just imagining things? The next few hours passed in tense silence. Every time Karoline checked the rearview mirror, the SUV was still there, maintaining a steady distance. They decided to take a detour, winding through narrow village roads to lose their pursuers. Eventually, after doubling back several times, the black vehicle disappeared from sight. Though relieved, Karoline couldn't shake the feeling that they were no longer alone. Whoever those men were, they clearly knew about the manuscript, and now they might suspect Karoline and Daniel had found something important. Back at their hotel, they locked themselves in their room and spread out their findings on the small table. The artifact sat in the center, its soft glow casting shadows across the walls. Karoline pulled out her laptop and began researching similar discoveries. To her surprise, there were reports of unexplained objects found in ancient sites around the world. Metal fragments embedded in stone, tools made from alloys unknown to modern science, and symbols carved into rocks that matched the ones on the artifact. Daniel focused on analyzing the object itself. Using a portable scanning device he'd brought along, he discovered that its composition defied conventional physics. "It's not just metal," he explained, showing Karoline the readings. "There's some kind of energy field surrounding it, like it's powered by, I don't know, quantum mechanics or something." Karoline frowned. "So, what are you saying? That this thing is alien technology?" Not necessarily, Daniel replied. It could be advanced human tech, from a civilization we don't know about, or maybe it's extraterrestrial. Either way, it proves that our understanding of history is incomplete. As they debated the implications, Karoline's phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. Stop digging. She showed it to Daniel, who immediately grew serious. They're watching us, he said. We need to be careful. Despite the warning, neither of them wanted to give up. If anything, the threat only strengthened their resolve. They agreed to continue their investigation but decided to keep their discoveries secret for now. Sharing too much information could put them in greater danger. The next morning, they traveled to another site mentioned in the manuscript, a remote hillside near Jerusalem. According to the text, this was where witnesses claimed to have seen lights descending from the heavens during Jesus' ministry. Locals referred to it as the Hill of Echoes, due to the strange acoustics caused by wind blowing through the rocks. As they explored the area, they noticed peculiar markings etched into the stones. Some resembled constellations, while others looked like circuitry patterns. Karoline took photos while Daniel sketched diagrams in his notebook. Suddenly, a loud buzzing sound filled the air, startling them both. They turned to see a drone hovering nearby, its camera lens pointed directly at them. Before they could react, the drone zoomed off, disappearing over the horizon. Karoline's pulse quickened. This isn't random, she said. Someone knows exactly what we're doing. That night, they returned to their hotel, exhausted but determined. While reviewing their notes, they realized the artifacts and symbols they'd encountered formed a pattern, a map leading to a specific location. Following the clues, they pinpointed a spot deep in the Judean desert, far from any towns or settlements. Their journey to the desert was grueling. The terrain was harsh, with jagged rocks and scorching heat under the relentless sun. By the time they reached the coordinates, their supplies were running low, and fatigue weighed heavily on them. But when they arrived, they found something extraordinary. Hidden beneath layers of sand was a massive stone structure, partially buried and covered in moss. Its surface was engraved with the same hybrid symbols they'd seen before. At the center of the structure was a circular indentation, roughly the size of the artifact they'd found in the cave. Without hesitation, Daniel placed the object into the indentation. There was a low rumble, followed by a blinding flash of light. When their vision cleared, they saw intricate carvings glowing softly along the edges of the structure. Words appeared, written in Aramaic, Hebrew, and a third language none of them recognized. Karoline read aloud the parts she could decipher. When the gate opens, truth shall be revealed. Her voice trembled with awe. What does that mean? Before Daniel could answer, a series of holographic images projected into the air above the structure. They depicted scenes of celestial beings interacting with humans, teaching them, healing them, performing what could only be described as miracles. The images shifted, showing advanced machinery and structures that looked futuristic compared to anything from the time period. Karoline felt tears welling up in her eyes. For her, this was undeniable proof of divine presence. This is it, she whispered. This is what I've been searching for. Daniel, however, remained skeptical. Or it's proof of extraterrestrial contact. These beings, they're not gods, they're visitors. Their differing interpretations sparked another heated debate. Yet, even as they argued, they couldn't deny the significance of what they had uncovered. Whatever the truth was, it transcended simple categories of faith or science. As they prepared to leave the site, they heard the roar of engines approaching. A convoy of vehicles sped toward them, kicking up clouds of dust. Men dressed in tactical gear jumped out, surrounding the structure. One of them stepped forward, holding up a badge. "You've crossed a line," he said sternly. "Hand over the artifact and nobody gets hurt." Karoline clutched the object tightly, her mind racing. She didn't know who these people were or why they wanted the artifact, but one thing was clear. They weren't going to let her and Daniel walk away without a fight. "We can't give this to them," she whispered to Daniel. "Whatever secrets it holds, they're too important." Daniel nodded grimly. "Then we run." With adrenaline fueling their movements, they sprinted in opposite directions, hoping to split the group's focus. Bullets whizzed past them as they dodged behind rocks and dunes. Somehow they managed to escape, disappearing into the vast expanse of the desert. Hours later, hiding in a shallow ravine, Karoline and Daniel caught their breath. Though shaken, they knew they had to keep moving. They had uncovered something. Monumental and powerful forces were determined to keep it hidden, but they also knew they couldn't stop, not until the truth came to light. For Karoline, the experience reinforced her belief that faith and reason weren't opposing forces, but two sides of the same coin. For Daniel, it opened doors to possibilities he had never dared to imagine. Together, they vowed to share their findings with the world, but first they had to survive. Karoline and Daniel knew they were in trouble. The desert stretched endlessly around them, barren and unforgiving under the scorching sun. Their pursuers weren't far behind, and with no water or shelter in sight, time was running out. Still, they pressed forward, driven by a shared determination to protect what they had discovered. "We can't let them take this," Karoline said, clutching the artifact tightly in her hand. Her voice trembled, not from fear but from conviction. "If we do, the truth will stay buried forever." Daniel nodded, his face grim. "We need to get to safety first. Then we can figure out our next move." The two of them moved as quickly as their tired legs would allow, navigating the rocky terrain with caution. They stuck to ravines and patches of scrubby bushes, hoping to avoid detection from above. Every so often they stopped to listen for signs of pursuit, the distant hum of engines or the crunch of boots on gravel. But all they heard was the wind howling through the canyon walls. After hours of relentless walking, they spotted something that gave them hope. An old abandoned farmhouse nestled at the base of a hill. Its roof was sagging, and its windows were boarded up, but it offered some semblance of cover. Without hesitation, they made their way toward it, slipping inside just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. The floorboards creaked beneath their weight as they explored the rooms. In the corner of what must have once been a kitchen, they found a rusted water pump. To their relief, it still worked, sputtering out a trickle of cool water when Daniel turned the handle. They drank greedily, washing away the grit of the desert. As night fell, they huddled together, whispering plans. Karoline pulled out her phone, checking for signal. There was none, but she managed to send a few messages offline, hoping they would go through once they reached civilization. One message went to a trusted journalist friend, asking him to investigate reports of unexplained archaeological finds. Another was addressed to Professor Klein himself, a bold move considering their earlier clash. "Why are you contacting him?" Daniel asked, raising an eyebrow. "He deserves to know," Karoline replied firmly. "He's skeptical, yes, but he's also smart. If anyone can help us make sense of this without jumping to wild conclusions, it's him." Daniel didn't argue. He trusted Karoline's instincts, even if he didn't always agree with her methods. Instead, he focused on studying the artifact again, using his flashlight to examine its glowing surface. As he rotated it in his hands, he noticed faint symbols shifting across its surface, like code rearranging itself. "Look at this," he whispered, holding it up for Karoline to see. "It's changing, like it's reacting to something." Karoline leaned closer, her breath catching in her throat. The symbols seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, forming patterns that looked almost alive. She reached out tentatively, brushing her fingers against the object. A surge of warmth spread through her palm, followed by a flood of images flashing before her eyes. Scenes of stars swirling in space, towering structures reaching into clouds, and figures cloaked in light speaking in voices she couldn't understand. She gasped, pulling her hand back. "What was that?" "I don't know," Daniel admitted, though his tone suggested he suspected more than he was willing to say aloud. "But I think the artifact is trying to communicate." Before they could discuss it further, a loud crash echoed outside. Both froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Someone, or something, was approaching the house. They scrambled to hide, ducking, behind a pile of crates stacked against the wall. Through a crack in the boards covering the window, they watched as shadows moved past the doorway. Voices floated in, low and urgent. "They've got to be here somewhere," one man muttered. "Search every room." Caroline's heart raced. She gripped the artifact tightly, unsure whether to feel comforted or terrified by its presence. Daniel motioned for her to stay quiet, then crept silently toward the door. Grabbing a piece of broken wood, he prepared to defend them if necessary. The intruders entered cautiously, sweeping flashlights across the darkened interior. When one beam passed, too close to their hiding spot, Karoline held her breath, praying they wouldn't be seen. But luck, or perhaps fate, was on their side. The men muttered among themselves, frustrated by the lack of evidence, and eventually left, slamming the door shut behind them. For several minutes, neither Karoline nor Daniel moved. Only when they were certain the coast was clear did they dare to speak. "That was too close," Karoline whispered, her voice shaking. "We can't keep running like this. We need help." Daniel nodded. "Agreed. Let's wait till morning, then head for the nearest town. We'll find a way to get the story out no matter what it takes." The next day they emerged from the farmhouse at dawn, squinting against the rising sun. The desert felt eerily quiet, as though holding its breath. With renewed determination, they set off toward a cluster of buildings visible in the distance, a small village called Eingedi. When they finally arrived, exhaustion etched into their faces, they sought refuge in a modest inn run by an elderly couple. The owners greeted them warmly, offering tea and bread without asking questions. Grateful for the kindness, Karoline and Daniel took turns resting while keeping watch over the artifact. Later that evening, Karoline ventured into the village square, where locals gathered to share stories and music. Hoping to blend in, she struck up conversations with shopkeepers and farmers, casually mentioning strange occurrences in the desert. To her surprise, many nodded knowingly. "There are places out there best left alone," one old man warned, his eyes narrowing. "People who go poking around come back changed or don't come back at all." His words sent a chill down Karoline's spine, but they also confirmed what she already suspected. Others had encountered the same mysteries she and Daniel had stumbled upon. Encouraged, she asked about specific sites tied to ancient legends. One woman mentioned a hidden library deep within the cliffs, guarded by monks who claimed it held secrets older than time itself. "This might be our chance," Karoline told Daniel excitedly when she returned to the inn. "If we can find this library, maybe we'll learn more about the artifact and why it's so important." Daniel agreed, though he remained cautious. "We're playing with fire here. Whoever those men were, they won't stop until they get what they want." Despite the risks, they decided to follow the lead. Early the next morning, they set out once more, guided by directions scribbled on a scrap of paper. The journey was treacherous, involving steep climbs and narrow ledges carved into the rock face. But when they finally reached the entrance to the monastery, they felt a sense of awe wash over them. The monks welcomed them solemnly, their robes flowing like shadows in the dim light. After explaining their quest, Karoline and Daniel were led to a chamber filled with ancient scrolls and manuscripts. Here they learned of civilizations long forgotten, beings who walked among humans as teachers and guides, and technologies far beyond mortal comprehension. One scroll caught Karoline's attention. It spoke of a prophecy, a time when humanity would rediscover these truths and choose between unity or division. As she read, tears filled her eyes. This wasn't just history, it was destiny. Meanwhile, Daniel studied diagrams detailing energy fields and celestial alignments. "This isn't alien tech," he murmured. "It's universal, like the universe itself is alive and we're part of its design." Their discoveries only deepened the mystery, leaving them with more questions than answers. Yet as they prepared to leave the monastery, they felt a newfound clarity. Whatever the truth was, it belonged to everyone, not just those seeking to control it. Back in the village, they used a public computer to upload photos and notes, ensuring their findings would reach the world even if they couldn't. Messages began flooding in, from journalists, scientists, and ordinary people eager to learn more. Among them was a response from Professor Klein, "I underestimated you," he wrote. "Perhaps there's more to faith than I allowed myself to believe. Show me your evidence and I'll do my part to uncover the truth." Karoline smiled faintly. For the first time in days, she felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be difficult, but together, they had taken the first step toward rewriting history, and perhaps understanding their place in the cosmos. The world changed almost overnight. Karoline and Daniel's discoveries spread like wildfire, thanks to the photos, videos, and notes they had uploaded from the village. Journalists picked up the story, sharing images of the glowing artifact, the mysterious symbols etched into ancient stones, and the holographic projections that seemed to defy explanation. Social media exploded with theories, some claiming the artifacts were proof of extraterrestrial life, others insisting they were evidence of divine intervention. Governments scrambled to respond, while religious leaders debated the implications for their faiths. For Karoline, it was both exhilarating and overwhelming. She had always believed in something greater than herself, but she never imagined her search for truth would lead to such a global awakening. Every day brought new interviews, lectures, and invitations to speak at conferences around the world. People wanted answers, and she was determined to give them as much clarity as she could. Daniel, on the other hand, found himself grappling with his own beliefs. As a scientist, he had always relied on logic and evidence. But the more he studied, the artifact and the ancient texts, the harder it became to dismiss the possibility of forces beyond human understanding. He spent hours poring over data, consulting experts in fields ranging from astrophysics to linguistics, trying to piece together how these advanced technologies, or whatever they were, fit into the timeline of human history. Despite their differences, Karoline and Daniel remained united in their mission. They knew the stakes were high. Powerful organizations, shadowy groups tied to governments, corporations, and even rogue factions within academia were desperate to control the narrative. Some wanted to suppress the findings entirely, fearing mass panic or upheaval. Others saw an opportunity to exploit the technology for profit or power. One night, after returning from yet another press conference, Karoline sat alone in her hotel room, staring out the window at the city lights below. Her mind raced with questions. What did it all mean? Was humanity ready for this kind of knowledge? And what role was she meant to play in shaping the future? Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Professor Klein. "We need to talk," it read simply. Curious and slightly apprehensive, she called him back. "I've been thinking about what you said," Klein began when he answered. His tone was uncharacteristically subdued. "About faith and reason not, being opposites but two sides of the same coin. I didn't want to believe it, but maybe there's something to it." Karoline smiled faintly. "It's okay to question things, that's how we grow." "I suppose so," Klein admitted. "But I have to ask, are you sure about all this? The risks are enormous." "I'm sure," Karoline replied without hesitation. "People deserve to know the truth no matter how uncomfortable it makes us. If we try to hide it or control it, we'll only create more fear and division." Klein sighed. "You're braver than I am. Just be careful. There are people out there who won't hesitate to stop you." His warning lingered in Karoline's mind as she prepared for her next move. Together with Daniel, she organized a press conference in Jerusalem, inviting scholars, scientists, and spiritual leaders from around the globe. The goal was simple: present the evidence and let the world decide what to do with it. The event took place in a large auditorium filled to capacity. Reporters jostled for seats alongside curious citizens, academics, and representatives from major institutions. When Karoline stepped onto the stage, the crowd fell silent, hanging on her every word. "What we've uncovered challenges everything we thought we knew about history, science, and faith," she began, holding up the artifact for everyone to see. Its soft glow illuminated her face, lending her words an almost ethereal quality. "This isn't just a relic of the past. It's a bridge to the future. It reminds us that we're part of something bigger, something interconnected and infinite." She went on to describe their journey, showing footage of the cave system, the glowing structure in the desert, and the monastery library. She shared translations of the ancient texts and explained how the artifact seemed to function as both a key and a communicator. Throughout her presentation, she emphasized the importance of collaboration, not competition, in uncovering the truth. When she finished, the room erupted into applause. Questions poured in from every direction, ranging from technical inquiries about the artifact's composition to philosophical musings about its purpose. Karoline handled each one with patience and grace, encouraging open dialogue rather than dogmatic conclusions. Professor Klein also spoke briefly, surprising many by acknowledging the validity of Karoline's work. "I came here today expecting to refute these claims," he admitted, "but I can't deny the evidence. Whether we call it divine or extraterrestrial, one thing is clear. Our understanding of reality is incomplete, and that's not a bad thing. It's an invitation to explore further." The press conference marked a turning point. While skepticism persisted, especially among hardline atheists and conspiracy theorists, public opinion began shifting. People started asking deeper questions, not just about the artifacts, but about themselves. Faith communities embraced the findings as validation of their beliefs, while scientists saw them as a catalyst for groundbreaking research. In the weeks that followed, similar discoveries emerged worldwide. Ancient sites in Egypt, Peru, and India yielded objects and carvings bearing the same symbols and patterns. Researchers working independently reported anomalies consistent with those described in the manuscript. Slowly but surely, a picture began to emerge, one of a shared heritage linking humanity across time and space. Karoline continued writing articles and giving talks, using her platform to advocate for unity and curiosity. Her book, Beyond Belief, became a bestseller, sparking conversations in living rooms, classrooms, and places of worship. For the first time in years, she felt truly fulfilled, knowing she had played a part in expanding humanity's horizons. Daniel, meanwhile, dedicated himself to studying the artifact and its implications. Collaborating with international teams, he helped develop new technologies inspired by its design. Though he still struggled to reconcile his scientific worldview with the mysteries they had uncovered, he found solace in the pursuit of knowledge itself. As for Professor Klein, he underwent a quiet transformation. No longer content to dismiss faith as superstition, he embarked on his own journey of exploration. He attended lectures on theology, visited sacred sites, and engaged in respectful debates with believers. Though his views remained different from Karoline's, he developed a newfound respect for the power of belief to inspire wonder and hope. Months later, Karoline stood atop a hill overlooking Jerusalem, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The city glowed warmly in the fading light, a testament to centuries of resilience and faith. In her hand, she held the artifact, now inert, but no less significant. She thought about everything that had happened, the danger, the doubt, the discovery, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. A shooting star streaked across the sky, leaving a trail of light in its wake. Karoline whispered a prayer, not for answers, but for guidance. She didn't know what the future held, but she trusted that humanity would rise to meet it, with courage, compassion, and an unwavering thirst for truth. And somewhere, deep within, the artifact, a faint hum resonated as if acknowledging her resolve.